All right, we're here with Jeff Schmidt. Thank you for walking 38 feet to get here. My favorite neighbor, the millionaire next door, youngest millionaire on the block. I can't wait to talk to you about life.
Looking forward to it, man. Thank
Cheers.
you for having me.
Well, let's rock and roll. So, Jeff, there's a couple words that I would use to describe you. I was just thinking about this the other day. I love youngest millionaire on the block. I think I want to use that from now on. But you're also my true millionaire next door. There's a book about that. Friend, and probably the only reason I'm not moving out of this neighborhood. So welcome. I'm glad we're here.
Got the hooks in you.
You got the hooks. Man, when I think about you, you're so successful from a young age. And I want to just peel that apart because I think so many people want what you've accomplished at such a young age. But take me back to where it started. So you were born and raised, which is fairly unique here.
Yeah, one of the rare Scottsdale natives. So
Yeah.
born and raised in Scottsdale, Arizona. Moved down to Tucson for about 2 years, but the rest of my life has been in Scottsdale. So born and raised here. Went to Desert Mountain High School. That was a fun experience, man.
Yeah?
Yeah. A lot of people look back in high school and think, they have all these bad memories and kind of awkward stages and all that. But high school was my time to shine. I had the best group of friends and we just had a blast.
Really?
Yeah. And so going to college was awesome. But man, I look back on those high school days and that was some of the happiest times of my life.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Was it what you would consider typical, or was it out of bounds fun? I mean, was it just, what was it?
It was just typical, man. Just good friends.
First cars and first girlfriends
Yep.
yeah.
All
So that
stuff.
wasn't an awkward. Have you had an awkward stage in life?
Yeah, I think I did. I was one of the things that was tough for me growing up was I was a late bloomer, really late bloomer. So, in middle school that was fine, and then come 8th grade, freshman year, I'm the smallest kid in the class now, and so I grew up kind of being average, and I went from that to being the shortest guy, the guy with no facial hair, baby face, all that stuff, and so that was a little bit of a tough adjustment for a couple of years there.
And
it really
was that high school or after?
That was like freshman year of high school and
Okay.
probably 8th grade and
Okay.
middle school. And then come sophomore year is when I really landed on the group
You
of
fully
friends.
bloomed by then?
No.
No?
Not till not till senior year, man. I was 5'3" going into senior
No
year.
way.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen a picture of that. Maybe.
I'll have to dig some out.
Yeah.
I wrestled on the wrestling team, and the lowest weight class was 103. And I never had to cut weight. I was always like 92 pounds.
Oh, even almost up to senior.
No, that was
Oh, that
just
was
freshman.
freshman.
year.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
That's awesome.
so yeah, that was the awkward stage of life, but it got better after that.
Were you always pretty buff though?
No,
No.
didn't start working out until senior year of high school.
Wow.
It's kind of been a lifestyle ever since.
So once college hit, everything had normalized, and you were fitting in with the freshmen.
Yeah. And so college hit, went down to U of A for a couple years just because I needed to get out of Scottsdale at some point. So
Did you start college here first and then go to Tucson?
No, U of A first.
U of A.
Graduated from ASU. So U of A for the first 2 years, and that was fun. Did the whole frat scene down there and everything.
And what caused you to want to get out of Scottsdale? There's just
A little distance from the family is always a good thing. You
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
bloom and become your
especially
own man. and all
especially
that.
at that time of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
I
pivotal time.
I had my distance when I was 13. I ran away. So
Yeah.
we all had to do it once. So frat life, typical frat life.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, the booze.
The booze,
Girls,
the parties,
the parties,
the girls, all
all
that
of
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a good time, man. And it was nice just knowing you had somewhere to go every Friday and Saturday night. Never had to find the party. The party came to you.
Yep.
which is kinda
Always
fun.
had a group of friends
Yep.
built in.
Yep.
And then you come back here to finish.
Came back here junior year, and that was a different ballgame because the frat life at ASU was not really existent. And even though my fraternity was at ASU, I just said, yeah, that's ship has sailed basically. So didn't do the frat scene the latter 2 years of college.
Yeah. Got it out of your system in Tucson. Oh. What about now? What do you think about my sons ask me this, and we have this conversation all the time. And I have a different viewpoint because I went to college for 1 year, 1.5 years, and then tried to be a rock star. So we see where that gets you. But my dad didn't go to college. In fact, I think he only went to 2 years of high school. And now the conversation with my older sons is, why? So do you feel like that's changed? Is college, back when you were going to college and when I was doing it, I think it was looked at as a necessity. And if you didn't have a college degree, you were thought lesser of for sure. What about now?
The way I view college now is I got a really expensive piece of paper. And I don't know that I necessarily used a whole lot of the concepts, but maybe it opened some doors, maybe it didn't. The way I'm viewing college for my kids is saying, hey, we'll start a 529 fund for you, but I'm not going to fully fund college. And so I have a 529 plan, which obviously they can only use for school, but then I'm funding probably about 3 times more than that in just a separate investment account. And my whole idea is that in 15 years, or for Harper, or for Mason in 14 years, or whatever, 12 years, college may not be a big deal. And I want to have a set of funds put aside for him where he can go to coding school, or he could do some trade if he's into it, because I don't know that the classical education system is going to be a big deal when our kids are older.
Yeah, I think it's fucked up. I think it's beyond not a big, in my opinion, which is, take it for what it's worth, but it's totally changed. It's totally different than what it was before, which was you went to do something, right? I mean, you came out with a marketing or business degree.
Business management.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's what you were going to do, and you did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait to talk about that. But now, I mean, you see these kids coming out of school with the liberal arts degree. I don't even know what you call them, but humanities studies. I'm like, humanities studies. I mean, what? It's just junk, and it's $80,000, $100,000 junk too. Yeah. And now it's not only not benefiting you, I think it's hurting you, unless you have to go, right? I mean, if you're going to be a doctor or attorney.
Totally. Well, here's the one thing I would say though. I really want my kids to have the first year freshman experience.
Yeah. How do we do? We build a compound.
I know.
Build a compound, and we'll bring in some dudes, and they can have their frat. We could kind of control it a little bit. You want a little control.
Well, that's the beauty of like living in the dorms freshman year.
Yeah.
You lived in the dorms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a little bit of freedom, but there's an RA there that's kind of keeping tabs on you. So you can't get too
There's
wild,
no doubt.
right?
There's no doubt that's where you first learn to kind of make some of your own decisions.
Yeah.
So what can that be supplemented with? What could we put him in that does that? I don't know that there is something.
I don't know that I'd want to throw him in an apartment complex and pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where things get a little wild and dangerous.
Yeah.
But having a little bit of oversight, I kind of want that for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could always stop writing the check, maybe set
Yeah.
some rules and then pull the check back. I think that worked for Christy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really bizarre. Really interesting. All right. So we got back to ASU. You graduate with a business degree. And what made you do that? What made you go for a business degree?
It's kind of the catch-all, I don't know what I want to do with my life degree. And so I figured...
Do you now?
I want to be like you when I grow up.
No, you don't.
No, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And quite honestly, getting into sales, you don't need a degree for that. You just kind of learn as you go. But maybe it did open up some doors and gave me some foundation on how to manage employees and things like that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what you go into that straight out of college?
Yeah. So actually worked my way through college in my current career, which was kind of an interesting story. So I was slanging cell phones at Sprint and realized that was my first sales job. Realized I kind of liked selling stuff.
No Kia?
No.
No?
But I did enjoy finding like solutions to problems and things like that. Like, all right, how can I get you into this new phone and upgrade your plan and all that stuff. So I was a little bit of a slimy sales guy at Sprint, but realized that I liked it, and I had some good success doing that, and was always kind of one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the store, hitting quota and all that. And then my dad worked for an insurance agency here in town. And I got the opportunity to go interview for a straight commission job. And so I was 19 years old at the time. And I was really proud of myself for getting the job. But they say, if you can fog a mirror, we'll give you a job and straight commission, you know.
Were you living on your own at this point?
I was living on my own. Yeah. So I lived in a rental house my dad owned, and was paying rent and all that stuff by this point. So I was kind of sort of ish on my own, had roommates and all that, but got the job as selling insurance at 19 years old, and I looked every bit at 12. So a lot of it was
still blooming.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
still blooming.
I can't imagine being a business owner.
I kind of feel like you're still blooming, Jeff. That flower is still opening.
Hey, maybe someday I can grow a nice beard like you.
That's a big deal, and I think that's you kind of went right over that. But commission only job. I mean, I feel like most people wish they could do that and have the freedom to, this is commission. It's what I put in is what I get out. And yet most people don't do that or aren't successful doing it after 6 months to a year because there's no safety net, right? Mm-hmm. No safety net.
I had a little bit of a safety net. My dad floated me like $1,500 a month on a loan. So I had to pay him back. It wasn't just free money, but that was kind of my, the way I could live for the first, 4 or 5 months until I started getting good commission checks and things like that.
And is that how long it took to start that income? A decent income was 4 or 5 months?
Decent for me back then. I think my first year I made $18,000.
Yeah.
But at 19 years old, I was like, my gosh, waiting tables and working at Sprint, I was making 10 or 12 grand a year. So.
Plus you were a professional.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it took about 6 months to get the ball rolling. And my whole thing was I've always kind of inherently been a little bit lazy. And so I was not the guy that was going to be hitting the phones, cold calling or going and knocking on doors and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, how can I figure out a plan B here? Because I don't want to be that guy. And so our company had this like automated faxing system. And so you could dial in numbers and fax to all these landlines or whatever. And I found a directory online of all my prospects and their fax numbers. And so I would go in and I would just enter like 50 to 100 of these every hour. And they brought the hammer down on me because basically I broke their faxing system because it was jammed up and so nobody else in the company could use it because I was sending out, 300 or 400 faxes a day. But it worked. You'd get like, 0.25, 0.5% response rate. And it was like, that's all I needed. That's a lead or two a day.
Yeah.
So it worked out, and I didn't ever have to pound the phones too much.
Wow. So I've never heard you say you have been inherently lazy. I would never have pegged you. I would never have used those words to describe you.
Yeah.
But you overcame that clearly by doing something nobody else either could or would, which is huge.
I read this book once it was early on in my career, it was called Never Cold Call Again because I hated it. And it had all these ideas about how you could work around, flyers and mailers and stuff like that. And that's actually how I built my entire business was off of direct mail. And everybody said it was dead, and it wouldn't work and things like that. But I ended up getting like 700 or 800 clients out of direct mail. So. And
then everyone's standing in a line behind you at the fax machine, getting ready to use it. What same type of insurance?
Yeah.
That you do?
Yeah, it was always senior care insurance.
And what drove you into that niche? Did you pick it?
No. So that's how I got hired was they had the senior care program at the agency that hired me. And so they said, if you want a job, this is what you're going to sell. And so I started doing that. It just kind of stuck. Realized that it was a underserved niche and it was something that I was decent at. So just kind of went with it.
And you made a really good living at it for how many decades? 2?
Going on 17 years.
17 years, almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept we talked about, and hopefully we'll talk about, doing what you love to do. But the other concept being finding how to love what you do because you just do. I mean, I don't know that when I first started in the insurance business, I had no idea what it was. I responded to a ad in a newspaper when they had those help wanted ad. And it said, work 4 days a week, make $1,000. I was like, oh, that sounds really good. I was 19 and I was spraying for bugs at the time, if you can believe that, in crawl spaces. But that sounded really good. But it didn't say anything about insurance. And so you go in and it turned out to be health insurance, knocking on businesses and selling health insurance. And if I knew now what I knew then, I would never have gotten into that line of work because it's hard. Like you said, you're literally walking up the doors, knocking them, or trying to find creative ways to get in the door, which you did. But then after a while, you just kind of figure out a way to not be miserable doing it and loving it.
Did you love cold calling?
That's a good. I mean, I don't think I could definitely say I didn't love it. I never woke up going, "Oh my God, I can't wait to pound the phones today." But I didn't have the dread that I know a lot of people have. I mean, a lot of people that I've worked with just dread it, absolutely dread it, and they'll find all the excuse in the world that resistance to do it. I never had that. I always would just sit down and like, all right, here's my list of. They would send me these postcards that were supposedly hot leads, turned out to just be postcards with names on it, and just call them, And so I never had that anxiety over it, and I don't think I still do. And I would still do it today. I just don't think it's a good use of time today. But I don't think you can do it today either. I don't think it's anything like it was before. I mean, think about there were no cell phones when I started. So you didn't know, caller ID was a feature you had to buy. Yeah. So no one knew I was calling them. So they would pick the phone up. I don't think you could do that today.
See, I've got this inherent fear of rejection. And so people would say, oh, what's the worst that could happen? They're just going to say no, right? To me, that was like dagger in the chest every time I would get that no or get somebody pissed off and hanging up on me, and so I just hated it. I dreaded cold calling. Did you
prep for it, or you just like your cold plunge, just dive in? I mean, because I think that's more of the norm. I would have to say that's more regular. People that just hate that are very good at all of the job, love all of it, but hate having to prospect and find that. So what did you do what did you have a routine? What did you overcome it with?
Yeah, I mean, you did the whole role-playing thing with your manager and all that, but I never overcame it. You asked me to cold call today, hate it.
Still the same.
Still hate it. I'll hop on the phone and I'll talk to somebody that wants to talk to me, and I'll do a really good job for them. But trying to get my foot in the door at a business and begging and pleading for that, or what I view as begging and pleading, that's not my game.
So the answer is just finding creative ways to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that was... I would say after the first year in business, I don't think I cold called ever again, which was really nice. And I just created this funnel of leads coming in, and so you could kind of pick and choose, and those were a lot easier to work than.
And the funnels came from first faxing, and then what was next? Mailers?
Faxing, direct mail, those were the two
anything
primary
other
ones.
Than cold calling.
Yeah. A lot of networking, a lot of associations, and shaking hands, kissing babies, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. All right. So let's go back to this inherently lazy comment. Let's explore this a little bit. So give me the details of a day in the life of an inherently lazy person that's successful, because there's plenty of inherently lazy people, but you were successful along the way. So what did a day look like?
So are we talking about back then or now?
Mm-hmm. We'll come to now. Let's go back then. Yeah. Let's go back then, and then we'll talk about now.
All right. So back then, it was a lot of weed. I mean, I would much rather sit on my couch, hit the bong and play some video games than go into the office and cold call. That was hard to get over, honestly, because that's a lot more fun than working. But I think it was kind of one of those pivotal moments when I met my now wife. And we were 21. I was 22. She was 21. And I was kind of like, all right, well, I think this is the one. And is she going to want to marry a pothead / drug addict? And it was like, yeah, it's time to make some changes.
Did you mix those things? Could you work while you were on weed or on drugs? No. So it was one or the other.
Yeah, it was one or the other.
Was it still a 5-day work week, or were you skipping out on office days?
I mean, that was the double-edged sword with sales, right? Because there's nobody breathing down your neck. And so I could come and go as I pleased, and it could very easily be a, client appointment or whatever it was, but that's just me going home and, taking the afternoon off.
And ripping it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, that was a little bit of a, turned into a dark period in life, but came out of it on the other side.
And you came out of it, you mentioned the books. You went on a book reading tour.
Yeah.
Meeting Kelly.
Yep. Yeah. So I met Kelly, figured this is the girl I want to marry. Waited way too long to get engaged.
Did you hide? That's sweet. I like that. Did you hide it, or was she privy to just the lifestyle?
She knew. Yeah. She knew. She didn't like it, but she knew.
Okay.
Yeah. So
waited too long to get engaged.
Yeah, waited too long to get engaged. So we waited about 5 years, met Kelly on a vacation in California. And so met her, we just hit it off. And I was like, man, this chick is cool. And so hung out for about 48 hours. I come back to Arizona, and we dated long distance for 5 years. And then I finally popped the question to
Wow.
her. Yeah. And, when we got engaged, that was when I really went on this kind of self-discovery exploration where it was like, I got to figure life out because this girl's way too cool and to be married to somebody who's a kind of a loser. And so,
But why would you think that? Not that Kelly is very cool and way too cool for that, but why would you think of yourself in those terms, loser, but you've been living that, and then all of a sudden, what made you go, oh, that guy's a loser, those actions or that lifestyle is a loser lifestyle?
I always had this vision in my mind of what I wanted life to look like. And it looks a lot like the life that we're living right now, honestly. And I knew that the lifestyle I was living was not going to get me there. And so that's where rubber met the road, and it was like, all right, it's time to sack up. Time to be the man that I know I probably should be.
Was there a catalyst, one moment, or was it over time?
There was, and not too many people know this story, but so I went through a bit of a addiction phase, and it wasn't weed; it was more uppers and things of that nature. So prescription drugs, a little bit of cocaine, things like that. And so it was not a good period of life. But anyways, we went to my buddy's wedding in Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple. And so he got married, and we were at this wedding, and everybody's partaking and all that stuff. And one of my buddies ends up almost sleeping with one of the bridesmaids who was married. And it became this whole scuffle in this hotel, basically. And so people are getting into a fight, and it's the family members of the guy getting married and my buddy and all of our friends kind of like squaring off against the other side of the family. And I come home and I'm like, what am I doing? Is this who I want to be? And at that point, I was prescribed Adderall, and I was taking, like 80 to 100 milligrams a day, which is a lot. So if you know anything about Adderall, 20 milligrams will get you going. 80 to 100 milligrams is like stop your heart if you don't have tolerance built up. And so I come home, and I quit cold turkey. And I was the biggest dick for a month to Kelly because I was going through withdrawal symptoms.
No therapy, no rehab, just stopped.
Just stopped cold turkey. So stopped doing Adderall. I was smoking cigarettes at the time, so kind of double whammy. Quit the uppers, quit nicotine, both at the same time. And so I was just an asshole for a month. And Kelly stuck it out with me, which was pretty cool. We were living together at the time, and I came out of it on the other side. And she goes, there was numerous times where you came home from work and you're gray, like your skin is just gray
Physically.
Like, you look like you were dying. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me that? And but
you probably felt like you were.
I felt like it was, man. It was bad. I mean, I was drinking like 3 Monsters a day on top of 80 to 100 milligrams of Adderall. So it's like you're up, you're going. And the way I rationalized it was, well, I'm better at work and at sales when I'm up like that. And that wasn't the case. It was just something I fabricated in my mind. But it would be doing all that during the day, coming home, popping a couple sleeping pills, like as soon as you get home, like 5 or 6, and then taking like 3 to 5 tequila shots. And so I would literally just have shot glasses lined up, and I would come home from work, sleeping pills, boom, boom, boom. And that was the only way I could come down. And yeah, man, I don't know how people live like that. I don't know how I lived through it, honestly.
Wow. But that takes I keep coming back to this, that inherently lazy word, because it takes a mind of a motherfucker to just stop. I mean, people try that for decades and decades and decades and can't do it. Cold turkey, especially with no assistance and no help from this one event. You come home and you just say, first of all, someone that's trying to quit smoking needs gobs and gobs of either nicotine patches or rehab or hypnotherapy or whatever they do to get out of that. But if you pile on the Adderall and the drinking and the sleeping pills, and one day you came home and just said enough, that's insane. That's a mind of a god, of a mega person to be able to say that. How I don't get it. I mean, and I'm asking you because I deal with this in my life and my family, trying to figure out how to help someone break a drug addiction. But you just broke it.
Yeah. Well, and I think...
Did you have faith by that point?
I did. Yeah. So I was raised Catholic, and so I'd say my faith was moderate. It was not deep. But part of me always knew what I was doing was wrong. It just didn't feel like this is the person I should be. And I think that for whatever reason, that moment at the wedding in Manhattan, Kansas was the switch that flipped. And I go, this is a mess, And so I came back, and I think, honestly, it was probably God just pulling me up out of the muck and mire is what got me out of it.
Wow. And this whole time, let's fast forward a little bit to the business part of it. So this whole time you're holding down. In fact, you're thinking in your mind you're excelling because you're up all the time, right? But
Mm-hmm.
your income's continuing to grow, continuing to be successful. And then this stops. And you said it was like a month, 2 months, 3 months. What was the time frame until you came out the other side of the tunnel and said, I feel like a new person. Now I'm going to hit the ground running?
It was probably about 30 days.
30 days.
About 30 days. And so after that happened, and after I came out on the other side, I went on this Selfdiscovery Rampage. I mean, I read probably 100 to 120 books in a year. And that was before Audible was around. So this is like
Actual reading?
paper books, right? And the most influential book that I ever read was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And the reason why that was the most influential book I ever read is because there's this chapter in there where it talks about I forgot what it's called, but it's your mantra that you repeat to yourself. And so you write out who you want to be and the time frame that you want to get there, how much money you're going to make, all the details, just list it all out. And then you look at yourself in the mirror morning and night, and you read that to yourself. And you read it to yourself with emotion tied to it. So you're like getting all fired up, and you're looking yourself in the eye the whole time. And then you do that 365 days a year times 2, because you're doing it morning and night. Your subconscious starts to believe that. And I think that was really kind of the turning point that year for me from a career and business perspective, because I went from I was making like 55 grand a year or 60 grand a year or something like that to my mantra was I'm going to make $100,000 this year.
That was the mantra.
That was the mantra. And it was, I'm going to do it by XYZ. And it was this whole thing. I mean, it was like a full page. And so read that morning and night for an entire year. And at the end of the year, I made $105,000. And I had never cracked 60 grand in my whole life. So basically I doubled up in a year, which was pretty cool. And then after that, you rewrite it and it's 150 grand the next year. And then you just keep taking these incremental steps. And sure enough, it worked. I mean, the subconscious is a powerful thing.
Has the mantra changed, or is it still a dollar?
The mantra doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean...
so you used it for a purpose.
I used it for
what
a purpose.
It needed to do.
Yeah. I did it for about 2 or 3 years. And then after that, I changed as a person, I think, because it went from trying to convince myself that I'm this person to believing that I'm that person.
And actually being that person.
Actually being that person. Not being inherently lazy anymore, because you start seeing the fruits of your labor.
Yeah. So that story turns out so incredibly different for 98% of people that go down that path. And yours didn't. And that was almost, so you mentioned the mantra, which is kind of like a routine, right? You still have routines. Tell me about the inherently lazy Jeff today and the routine that exists. What's a day like now?
I'm different now. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm inherently lazy anymore. I think that part of me died probably when I was about, probably
good, because I was having a hard time understanding that. I've known you for 5 years now, and I've never seen that.
Well, you know how it is.
I've seen the opposite.
Yeah. Well, you have a kid, and it changes that laziness real quick, right? And I think that kind of went out the door when Mason was born. So.
Okay, so tell me about the routine. What's the day in the life of the youngest millionaire on the block?
So today, I don't set an alarm anymore, which is great. That's the best thing about selling the business and kind of working for yourself is there's no alarms anymore. So I usually wake up around 6:30, somewhere around there. Get up out of bed, brew a cup of coffee, and then I sit down and read the Bible. And so I read the Bible for about 30 to 45 minutes every morning. And that's without fail. And one of the coolest things is my kids know that's Dad's time. And so they come out and they see me and they go, "Oh, Daddy's doing Bible time," and just hopefully it's sowing some seeds within them to realize this is what you should do. So it's Bible time, followed by prayer, and then it's just the normal dad stuff. Get the kids ready for school, kind of make sure that they're fed, they're clothed, teeth brush, all that stuff.
During that part of the day, how do you keep the thoughts of the rest of the day from coming in?
I don't check email until I'm through that routine.
So you don't get up, your first piss of the day, you're not looking at your phone.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
If I'm looking at my phone, I'm researching something. It's not going to be emails or work related though, typically.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that gets you through. Well, you're mid-morning, but most people by the time they're waking up, right? 8:30.
Yeah, I'd say usually that's all wrapped up by 7:30, 7:45, and then it's the kids stuff. Kids are off to school typically by about 8:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're on to work?
And it's on to work.
Is that the first time you check email?
Yeah. Usually that's the first time I check email. Put out all the fires for the day, all that stuff that we get as sales guys. And then typically there's a mid-morning break, and I found that works really well for me. So take a break around 10:30, 11, I go hit the gym. And I feel like if I can get solid 2 hours of work in or 2.5 hours of work, then that break is just a good reset for me. And mentally more than anything, I'm come back and I'm ready to go.
Every day?
Every day.
Every day.
Much. Well, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So it's typically hit the gym, then come home, do the sauna, cold plunge, and then back at it for work for the afternoon.
We talked about the cold plunge, and the only reason I want to talk about that again is because it goes to this idea of the mindset. It goes to this idea of doing things that are hard, but that are good for you, right? I was reading a book that was talking about resistance versus consequence, and if you give into resistance, then you deal with consequence, and resistance is much harder, but consequence is much more devastating, right? Every time you walk out of the office and head to the gym, at this point, there's probably little resistance. But when you first started doing that, the idea of now I have to go work out, I mean, maybe not. I mean, you're so buff, maybe that's all you've ever done is work out, and you love it. I don't love it. So the idea of walking in and doing it, there's always something that could pop up in the way of that. Do you have something that you don't love that you do on a routine basis that resistance tries to get in the way of? Or at this point, have you done the routine so long that it's ingrained?
I would say being proactive with work is probably the thing that I have the most resistance with. And that's in terms of prospecting or doing the things that I know would probably generate more business. The inherently lazy part of me still kicks in at some point. We've
kind of come full circle to that cold calling.
Because it's, there's always that part of you that says, I put in the hours, I put in the work, I should probably sit back and reap the rewards a little bit. Well, you can't do that. I mean, how it is in sales or running a business. You kind of have to keep going, keep your foot to the gas. But
a lot of people stall out way faster than you stalled out. Not that you've stalled out, but when you talked about making 60 and then wanting to go to 100, most people stall out at that 60 and never go past that. Yeah. And you just kept going and kept doubling and kept doubling. And that speaks to I think it's a mental strength, I don't know for sure. I think it's a mental strength that you have, and I would love to know where you get it from. I think you might tell me religion, faith is part of that. I think you've told me that Kelly's part of that. The kids have contributed to that. Is there anything else that you can think of that maybe it's genetic?
I don't think it's genetic, man. I mean, it could be. My dad is very successful. And so I think we were kind of raised in that environment where that was kind of the expectation was, you're going to be successful. And all three kids turned out to be very successful in their careers. So it could be genetic. Yeah. It could be the environment that we were raised in. Yeah. Don't have a good answer for you on that one.
A mental giant. Okay, so let's maybe fast forward a little bit. You've done what you've done for 17 years. You're at the point where there's a decision to just keep doing it for the rest of your working life, or create an entirely new chapter. Now you speak to a whole different set of people. The folks that are stuck in the $60,000 range and can't figure out what the next step is. This is a different set of person that's wildly successful doing it, and could just keep doing that at that level of success, incrementally growing. You were growing. You weren't stagnant, right? Incrementally growing for the next 30 years, or it's time for a new chapter. What's going through your mind when you get approached with the idea that it could be time for a new chapter?
Yeah. So we sold the business October 1st of 2021, and we made that decision because it was basically, we're at this crossroads where I could either buy out my two partners who were older and continue to run the business by myself, or we could sell. And we decided at that point I decided I didn't want to run everything. I didn't want that burden on me of 20 people and their salaries and all of that solely on my shoulders. I feel like I was great as a partner, but I wouldn't be great as a solo person leading a company. And so we decided to sell the business. And at that point, we went out to market and we talked to about 10 different companies that were suitors and all that. And we landed on one in particular. And it's worked out pretty good. It's different going from being a business owner to being an employee. But what it has done is it's allowed me some margin in life where I never had margin. And I think, how that is running a business. You're going all the time. I have a lot of time to sit back and kind of think about things now, think about what I want my legacy to be, think about what I want life to look like, think about what's important. And I never did that really for the previous 10 years or 15 years. And so now it's more of a focus on the kids. And, we talked about that 18 Summers book that I read and how you only get 18 summers with your kids, and shoot, Mason's 7. So I'm already, quarter of the way through.
11 left.
Yeah. And so it's that's kind of the focus now, is being the best dad that I can be and just realizing that these years are fleeting. And so
do you think if you could rewind time, years, before you knew the business was going to sell, how could you capture that mindset? Because that's what I would want to tell people that are in their 30s that didn't work as hard as you did and didn't have the talent that you did, that don't have a business to sell, that it's not a dollar amount. Or is it? You could tell me that it is. But is it a dollar amount that allows you to go, well, now I can take a breath? Or is it, I should be taking that breath and reading that 18 Summers and enacting that no matter where I'm at any point in my life?
Yeah. I feel like I got really lucky that we sold the business when we did, and then I got the margin when I did, because I know the demons in my mind would have kept me going, and I probably would have sacrificed my family and my kids in order to get the business success.
Well, that's funny that you put it that way, because when you say sacrifice the family and your kids, I knew you. I've known you since you were working full time before the business sale was a thing, and I don't think anyone looking on from the outside in would say you were sacrificing your family or your kids. I think you were spending just as much time as any normal person would on the family, with the kids, with Kelly. So the idea that to you thought that would be sacrificing, it says a lot, because I think that's normal for most people.
Yeah.
And that wasn't normal.
Who wants to be normal?
Who wants to be normal?
No. I want to be an exceptional dad. Business success it's great, but it's fleeting. I mean, the second you retire, people are probably going to remember you for 12 months, 18 months, but then they're on to the next thing. So
could you unlock that though before you were successful? I think that's the one thing that I've always been stuck on, is I may have unlocked it only because I failed so miserably with my oldest kids. And my first the first chance I had was a complete and utter failure because I was focused on too many things. So I was lucky enough to get a second shot at it and to see all that had happened back there. And that changed my mind. Successful. It didn't have anything to do with success in the business sense, because I'd already seen how much I fucked it up in the personal sense. And I wasn't going to do that again, regardless of where. And in fact, when we first got married and even with when Andy was first born, I wasn't incredibly successful. I was mildly, we weren't wanting for anything, but I wasn't incredibly successful at that point. But I had already learned that lesson the hard way from a personal standpoint. without that, how do you unlock that for somebody who is newly a father? Maybe not the success that they want. They're chasing that now, but you can go, that's all well and good, but the dollar amount isn't going to change the fact that you have 18 summers.
Yeah.
How do you do that right now, no matter where you're at? And I wonder if, I don't even know what my question is. Maybe it's, would that realization have come even without the business sale?
I think being close to you has done wonders for me in that regard, because I've seen somebody that's on the other side of having 3 grown children and seeing, all right, if I could go back, I would do X, Y, Z, and being able to like kind of pick your brain and having, you know, rum nights where we just talk about this kind of stuff has been pivotal, because quite honestly, I think when you're in your 30s or 20s, you're hard charging, right? You're trying to create your legacy of who you are in your career. And a lot of times the family gets sacrificed. And until you take a step back and you talk to people that are wiser and on the other side of it, you're not going to realize that these moments are precious, man, and they're fleeting. And so I think a lot of that was just talking to people like you know, honestly.
Just living in the moment.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because you don't ever understand what impact you have on people until it's too late most of the time. When you're at the end of the road and you go, oh man, maybe that was okay. Maybe all that heartache and all the shit that you went through was for something. So let's talk about next chapters then. So I want you to tell me, even though I know this, I can't wait to hear that again, what's going on right now, which is talking.
Yeah. So
let me preface this by saying you wouldn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Right? You could now take your old inherently lazy self, make it fully lazy, and do nothing with, right? You don't have to do anything. So now you're at a point where you've come from this place of, I maybe don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it because I want to be successful. Now you're successful and you don't have to do it. And yet you're going to go and do it. And what is it that you're going to go do?
Well, that's $1 million question. Yeah. And that's, what do you want to be when you grow up type question. But, you know, honestly, I know the demons that I've got, and I know if I did nothing that I would really screw up my life. And so the idea of retiring or just kind of riding off in the sunset, I've shelved that. And I've said, that's not for me. I'm probably going to continue working in some fashion or some regard until the day that I die. Just because I know I need that and I want to make a difference in the world. So a lot of it's going to be more meaningful, though. It's not going to be based on money. It's not going to be based on income. It's going to be based on how can I help people. So, you know, we've gotten a lot of joy, Kelly and I, out of doing premarital coaching and things like that, where we're able to help young couples and kind of give them the wisdom and experience that we have 10 years into a marriage. I love that. I love the idea of being able to pour into younger people that are trying to start their careers or trying to get into sales or insurance or something like that. I also love marketing. I mean, that's always been a passion of mine. And so the idea of doing something in regards to marketing is pretty cool. I don't know exactly what that is yet, but trying to work through that. And I think I would get a lot of joy out of it. I want that job that feels like it's not a job.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning and you're excited. And quite honestly, insurance has been great to me. And it's created a very lucrative career, great business that we sold. I never woke up in the morning and was jazzed to do it. You know, it was always kind of like, all right, let's put on our game face and let's get after it. You know, like you had to kind of psych yourself up for it, but it was never something where I popped out of bed. And that's what I want.
Yeah.
I want to be able to pop out of bed and be stoked for the day.
Well, maybe the wrapper of insurance, the marketing wrapper, maybe that's how you find that.
Yeah.
The path to that, because you're incredible at that. All right, so we were talking about next steps. So let's talk to me about what you're doing now. So you said, that's $1 million question. I really don't know what I want to do. And I love that, because I feel like that's the question we should be asking when we're 19. And the journey that you're on now is the journey we should go on when we're 19, which is you're embarking on this, I would call it a tour. I would call it a talking tour. Tell me about the talking tour.
The talking tour?
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about? Oh, the year of friends. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the year of friends. So figuring out what I want to do with life next is it's a pretty daunting thing, right? And so the idea that I'm going to be able to figure that out on my own is asinine. Like there's no chance. And so my idea was, hey, let's use this next year and let's just talk to as many people as we can. And so what we're doing is, or what I'm doing, is I'm setting up at least 2 meetings a week with people, just either people that are in my circle or people kind of on the periphery of my circle. And so I'm just going out and having lunch, having coffee, and just kind of meeting with them and just seeing where the year goes. And so far we're way ahead of schedule. I think in the last like 2 months I met with, I don't know, probably 30, 35 people, something like that. But it's just interesting because at the end of the day, what's the worst thing that could happen? I get out of the year and I've made some good friends, or I'm in the exact same spot that I am right now. I mean, there's literally no downside other than a huge potential upside.
And when you're having these conversations, you're talking to, I mean, let's basically give or take a week or two, 100 people this year, right? Okay,
Yeah.
2 a week, and you're just talking about what they're doing, their life, maybe their life story, or what's happening right now, what their business is, what their family is. I mean, you're having all these conversations to go, that sounds interesting and unique.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people love talking about themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so you go into it with a bunch of questions and tell me your story. I just want to hear about your background. How did you get to where you're at right now? And there's been some really interesting conversations that have gone on. And a lot of it centered around people through the church that I know, which is cool because a lot of it has the faith background, but they're also wildly successful. And so it's like, how do you mesh the two?
Mm-hmm.
How can you blend faith and business success?
How do you do it?
I don't hide it, honestly. And most of my clients are Christians, which is kind of cool because I just put it out there. And if somebody doesn't like it, that's fine. There's a million insurance agents out there. You don't need to work with me. I'm not shoving it down your throat. I'm not, evangelizing and hitting you over the head with the Bible. But if you ask me, yeah, I'm a Christian. Yeah, this is what I believe in and all that stuff. And so it's been kind of cool because over the years, my book of business or my clientele is like 95% Christians that share the same values that I do.
What about employees, business, bosses and employees? It's an HR nightmare sometimes to come out and just say what you are supposed to say.
Yeah.
In any religion, doesn't matter what your religion is or what your belief is. And sometimes you say it unless you're claiming to be a frog. You can say that and not have any repercussions. But you claim to be a Christian and have repercussions. How does that play in the workforce, or does it at all?
It was different before we sold the company. So before we sold the company, we were very openly Christian, and we still are. I am, but the company as a whole has 15,000 employees now, and so there's no way that they can take a stance like that. So you just have to be a little bit more careful about how you say things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you don't hide it. Does it play into your decision-making process when it comes to business decisions, would you say?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's always about doing the right thing. There's always a higher power, and there's somebody that's kind of looking over your shoulder and saying, all right, did you do the right thing? And so a good example of that was, I was going through my commission report for last month, and I realized I had been overpaid on some commissions. And it was just a percentage difference that shouldn't have been there. Worked out to my favor to the tune of a couple grand, but it was like, is that worth it? Is that worth sacrificing your values and going to sleep at night having this thing on your shoulder to make $3 or $4 grand?
Right.
To me, no. To somebody else maybe, but I don't want that following me around.
Yeah, got to sleep at night.
Yeah.
So your faith, I think it goes into even your management of your finances, I think we could say, right? So investments. Tell me about the Solomon Fund.
Yeah, so the Solomon Fund, that's super cool, and it's something I wish I had learned about a lot earlier. So Solomon Fund is it's a fund that you can invest in that loans money to up-and-coming churches. So either they're brand new churches or they're an established church that's trying to do an expansion or something like that. So you invest your money with them, and they have different tiers where it's like a 5-year plan, 3-year plan, 1-year plan, then on demand, and it's just different interest levels at each one. but the top tier is like pays almost 6%, I think. And so right now with the way the market's going and everything going down this year, if I can make 6%, that's like a 25% swing, you know.
And invest in something you believe in.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's going to further the kingdom and do some good work out there.
Speaking of investments, what about cryptocurrency? So I think I remember the day that we were in there talking about farming cryptocurrency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you may know more about this than I do. What do you think about it now?
Well, to bring you up to speed, so I got all of my crypto off of centralized exchanges. Because
I thought you were going to say you invested in the farm.
No, didn't invest in the farm.
So there was a minute there where you can invest in the servers, right?
Yeah.
And I think most people don't even understand what this is when I get asked all the time, should I invest in crypto? And my first response is, do you know what it is?
Yeah.
And the answer is a blank stare every single time. Well, beyond the fact that you don't even know, what the end game is, how does it get there? And that's farming, right? That's where you buy these servers and you juice them up and they're going constantly and they're decrypting crypto.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So they're basically solving these algorithms or these equations to farm Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it is. And so the idea was about 6 months ago, I was going to get into that and I was going to buy possibly a lot of machines to the tune of, a lot. Don't want to get into the numbers, but it was going to be a lot of money. And I just had this pit in my stomach where I was like, I don't know that that's where I should be investing right now. And about a month later, crypto promptly crashed, 60%. And so I was like, thank God I didn't do that. However, I do still believe in crypto. And I do believe that that's going to be something that I would bet in our lifetime, half of our transactions are done via crypto. And so I'm a big believer in Bitcoin and Ethereum. A lot of what they call shit coins, which is like just the, random Dogecoin and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm not going to invest in those anymore. I kind of took my lumps on that already. But I do hold quite a bit of Bitcoin and Ethereum right now.
What's the difference between the shit coins and the big boys other than adaption? Yeah. Right? So if Shiba Inu or Dogecoin got adapted and more people put their money there, wouldn't it be the same as Bitcoin? I mean, the process is the same?
No. So, and I'm not a crypto expert, so I'll kind of preface it with that. But Bitcoin, there's a finite amount. So I think there's like 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be made, ever. And so there's a scarcity factor there. Whereas pretty much every other...
Who decides that? Who makes the decision that says once 21 million is hit, we'll give you a couple more? Is that possible?
So I think the way that the system was set up initially is that's it. Like there's no more. And nobody knows who the creator of Bitcoin was. So Satoshi Nakamoto is the guy, right? But he's like a fictional character. So he's not like a real person. And I think he did that intentionally so he's not, doxed. But basically, yeah, there's a finite amount of coins. And that's one of the only ones that I'm aware of where there's a finite amount. Anybody else can just kind of mint more coins and then they're worth nothing. Yeah.
So you didn't farm it?
Didn't farm it. Invested in it. I thought I was a genius for the first 6 months.
Yes, so did everyone else.
Everything kept going up, and then promptly crashed after that. So, but I still hold, and I'm going to continue to hold, and I'm not going to sell.
We were at Arizona Federal. We went to see a show there. They have a Bitcoin cashing machine or Bitcoin ATM where you can trade in your Bitcoin and get cash out for it. The first time I've ever seen one, but what that tells me is what you're saying, which is eventually that's going to be a currency.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. It's just in my mind, it's like any other private placement. It's like any other private investment. It's unregulated, which means a lot of people can get away with a lot of shit. Like you saw the FTX and the blow up of all that, and it cascaded down. Well, that was because there was no regulation, and one person could choose to funnel these funds wherever she wanted, and it comes out the other end, and it's not what everyone thought it was, and everything crashed. I think you're always going to have that until it gets regulated, and I'm all for no regulation. But without any regulation, I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I would agree with you. And I think if there's advice I have to anybody watching this, get your coins off of centralized exchanges.
Which is not super easy to do, right? I mean, there's a little complexity to it because there's crypto.com, there's Coinbase, there's all these places that make it easy to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you get it and take it back?
Yeah, so it's called a cold wallet. So cold storage, which is basically, it looks like a little USB stick. And so it's kind of intimidating because all your crypto is on this little stick, right?
Well, and there's been stories of millions of dollars lost because they can't find that stick, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. That's like cash under the bed, baby.
But if you lose the stick, there's these key phrases, and it's usually like 20 to 25, phrases that you can plug in, and you can get access to it again. So if you lose the stick, you're not totally out of luck anymore. You just have to have your key phrases written down and stored somewhere safe. But yeah.
So you have a USB in your house somewhere that's worth millions?
I'm not going to tell you where it's at.
All right. Well, let's switch top. What do you think about Kanye West?
Oh, man. I saw him walk out of a interview yesterday with Tim Pool. You see that?
No.
Oh, man. Tim Pool's interviewing him, and he just gets up and leaves.
Wow. To be that wealthy and that demented. I don't think I'd want that combination.
Is he running for president or something?
He did for a minute.
I thought he was doing it again.
I hope so. I mean, it just makes life more interesting when he does that. I think he should. I think it should be Donald and him on the same ticket. Let's see what happens. Holy shit. Well, let's talk about, we're running out of time. Let's talk about two things. Regrets. If you could take anything back, what would it be? In 37 years, 38? God, you're so young.
Regrets. Man, it'd probably be that drug phase I went through. Yeah, I think that consumed about 5 years of my life that it didn't need to. And, life has turned out really good. Really good. But if I didn't have those 5 years that were wasted, what could have been?
Yeah, and you think, maybe I'm 5 years ahead, but at the same time, that's the stuff you learn from those 5 years. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't regret, in some ways I don't regret that because it gave me a platform to be able to relate to people. Because as a Christian, if you want to talk to somebody about, drug addiction or whatever, and you're just, this superstar Christian that was raised as a pastor's kid or whatever, how are you going to relate to that? But if you went through it and you walked the same steps in their shoes, then you can talk to them and go, hey,
you
can get better.
Street cred.
Yeah.
You have to, yeah. And I think people don't listen to you as much without it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Man.
All right. All right, so let's talk music for a second. I know some of your musical taste, but what I really want to know, and I think most people would want to know, is when it's time to get shit done. You mentioned you're inherently lazy. You have been in the past. But clearly there's a point where you kick it in because you went through your whole progression of getting your first sales job, selling your business for millions, and here you are today. What's on your get shit done playlist? When you're ready to ramp it up, what is it?
It's probably some hardcore techno EDM, which is funny because that's not me at all. That is not something I would normally listen to, but that beat gets you going.
Just keeps it going?
Gets you going.
Yeah.
What
about morning, waking up? What kind of playlist? Or let me ask you a different question. Does your life have a playlist? So are you, and I'm asking you from my perspective. So when I get up and shower the first part of the day or sauna, there's music. And it changes. It's different, but there's music always. So if there is music when you're up in that morning period, we know what your get shit done list playlist is. What's the morning period?
Morning is probably more like Christian music. Just kind of get in the right headspace.
Inspirational?
Yeah, inspirational type stuff.
Yanni?
Not so much Yanni.
Yanni. I love Yanni, by the way. I'm not afraid to say that. That was my first concert.
Yeah.
One of my first concerts that I went to that I could remember is Yanni.
You ever seen Kenny G?
Not live, but I also love Kenny G.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody that's a master at their craft,
Yeah.
I love. And Yanni and Kenny G are one of them. And so after hours, your playlist, which I adore and have adopted is
Band Camino Radio.
Band Camino Radio.
Man, there's so much good stuff. So Band
It's
Camino.
not pop rock. It's
pop rock.
alternative rock. Is it pop rock?
Pop rock, yeah.
But good pop rock. You know, when you
Great
think of pop rock, sometimes you think of like tub thumping.
Yeah.
This is not that.
No, this is not that. But they are starting to get a little mainstream right now. I mean, like I mentioned to you earlier, they were on I was watching an NFL game yesterday, and they're on the outro music going into a commercial. It's like, dang, that was my band. I didn't want them to be that popular.
So if you want to be the youngest millionaire on the block, you've got inspirational music in the morning,
Yeah.
followed by sauna, cold plunge, taking kids to school, followed by hardcore tech EDM, a workout at the gym, come home to a fantastic rum, and pop rock.
Yep. All day.
It's so easy.
Band Camino, nightly radio. Oh, they're great.
I can't wait to see what the next chapter holds.
Yeah. But you know what? You forgot the nighttime routine. So nighttime routine is fire pit, White Russians, 90s alternative.
Key to success. Okay, last question. I promise. If you could say anything to Mason and Harper 10 years from now, what would it be?
Don't let the moment pass you by. I think so much of young adulthood is spent wishing for the next phase. And especially with kids. All right, you have the kid. Well, once they're out of the newborn phase, I'm going to enjoy this. Once they're walking, I'm going to enjoy this. Once they're in elementary school, blah, 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 blah. It just goes down the line. But at the end of the day, you got to live in the moment. And I think that's something that it took me a long time to realize. And so I catch myself now just soaking in those little moments where, like Harper, I went into her room this morning and it was like 6:45. Normally that's my Bible time, right? And I walk in and just to say good morning to her, and she's playing. Daddy, come play with me. And so I sat down and I played with her for like 10 minutes. And we were playing with these little little planes that were flying around. And it was like, yeah, I could have gone and done my Bible study 10 minutes earlier. Am I going to remember that? No, I'm probably going to remember the 10 minutes with her. So it's living in the moment. Don't pass it up. Life is short. You never know when you're going to leave. Just make sure that you're enjoying every day.
That makes my heart happy. And the fact that you figured that out in your 30s makes me jealous. Cheers. Love you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, man.
All right. Acrylic Financial Incorporated is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by those on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Acrylic Financial. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance, and some guests may have been paid a fee to be interviewed for this show.